put your questions into the Q&A box to the right of my head. Also, if we have polls, please make sure right next to the Q&A box you answer those polls. Everyone's been great so far, but we still have all that information we're trying to gather. All right, we're going to jump right into this. How is the return to work going to impact culture, brand, and overall workplace strategy? An amazing panel, a very global panel, as you will notice. So I'm going to introduce our moderator, who will introduce the rest of the panel, Dinesh Malkani. He's the CEO and founder of Smarten Spaces. So I'll ask all of our panelists to turn on your cameras and turn on your microphones. And Dinesh, you take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Heather, and welcome to this panel discussion. I have an excellent panel here together with us. So Jana, Jennifer, and Ruby, I'll let you all introduce yourselves. So maybe Ruby, we can start with you, if you don't mind. Yep.
Good afternoon. My name's Ruby. I'm from Toyota Finance in Australia. It's been an interesting time for us, and we've started returning back to the office in the last couple of months. So I'm keen to share with you a little bit about our journey, and hopefully that's of value. Thank you.
Excellent, Ruby. Thank you. Jana?
Hi, thank you. My name is Jana Fain-Rawson. I'm the Director of Facilities and Workplace for Zwift. We've also been, like everyone, through a challenging time. We are still working remotely, but looking forward to hopefully going back towards the end of the summer.
Excellent, Jana. And go ahead, Jen.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Beltran-El-Katsiri. I am the Workplace Experience Director for Edmunds.com. Currently, we're still working remote and plan to for the remainder of the year. But like most, we are planning and our return, and as well as, working with the current virtual workspace as well. Happy to be here. Thanks.
Okay, super. Before I just dive into the questions, and I'm sure people want to know what's going on. I think just to set the context, right? We're seeing companies that are still working from home and will continue to do so maybe till the end of the year. We have others that are just around the corner doing their surveys, preparing their workplace. And then we have people like Ruby who have been back to work for the last 2 to 3 months, a lot of learnings and experiences. And I think many companies around the world are going to be at different stages. We worked with customers in about 17 countries now, and we're finding that there's a huge sort of impact where people think about getting back to work, right? From what's the technology that they need to put in to make the transition smoothly? How does this impact culture? Questions around productivity. Was it higher before we went back? Is it going to be higher when we going back? Or has it actually been better having come back, Ruby? So these are all questions which are top of mind. And I think, actually what I'm going to do is, Ruby, if that's okay with you, I'm going to start with you since you have been back for a bit. But, essentially you've seen people transition from being at home, coming back to work. What are some of the driving factors that actually make people come back to work and, in some cases just want them to stay back at home?
Yeah, it's been really interesting, actually. What we thought it would be wasn't the case. After almost a year of working from home, we were shut down in March 2020. We went through this journey of working from home. First, there was a technological shift that we had to overcome. Many of us didn't actually have laptops, and just going through that training. And what we found when we started returning, and the key to that was actually getting to know what was happening for people at home, was those who wanted to come to work. It was about their home not really being comfortable to work in. So as a facilities manager, it was always interesting, trying to create a space that was equal and fun. But that actually wasn't the case when people wanted to come back. What they needed was safety. They needed quiet. And the cohorts that we were seeing in the office were sort of younger people, which was interesting. And when you walked around and you asked them why, it was they were living with a whole bunch of roommates who were too noisy and there was not enough internet bandwidth, so they couldn't remain productive, right through to people who, could be living with their parents and looking after elderly or perhaps young children, again, just trying to find peace and quiet because they really want to be productive and loyal to the company. So that was a shift in thinking as to why we come back, because we were really focusing on creating a safe space and, sanitizing and PPE and all of that, but that's not what was driving them back.
Sure, Ruby, thanks. And I'll come back to obviously some of the other experiences that you've had. So Jana, I'm pretty excited to know about a survey that you talked about last time that you were conducting with your employees while they're working at home. It would be great if you can share some insights into what that survey was about and how are you looking at things now?
Yeah, so we're still actually sorting through a lot of the data that came through, but very consistent themes are presenting themselves. Because we're a tech company, it was actually pretty easy for us to pivot to working from home last March. So people have the technological tools that they need. Some folks were dealing with what Ruby had mentioned, roommates. A lot of people have kids running around. At least in America, school has been from home for the last year. So a lot of those themes were coming up, but also a lot of people were enjoying the time they were getting at home with their family and their kids. But the thing that keeps coming up that we're seeing in the surveys we're sorting through is over 90% of our staff miss the collaboration of being in a space and seeing folks. And we were surprised that the number was that high. We knew that people missed seeing other people. We thought it was because they've all been locked up, but things have loosened up. But that has definitely been a driving theme. And of course, no surprise to anybody on this panel, the idea that there might be some sort of hybrid work situation potentially for everyone.
Okay, that's 90%. Wow, that's a very high number, but I'm sure even while you're working remotely, you're looking for means and ways to be able to collaborate. And talking about working remotely, Jennifer, you have been thinking about maybe coming back to work towards the end of the year. Would love to hear about, while people are working at home, how are you keeping up with productivity? How are you managing the cultural aspects of things?
Yeah, so we actually, since day one, we, brought it back to sort of our goals of what's important for the employees, and making a safe space, as Ruby mentioned, was also critical for us. Obviously not just at our headquarters office, but it's also in the virtual space. So we always want to create an area for employees to be able to gather and collaborate. And so we quickly just expanded our platform that we were using Slack. We only used it in minimal use, and we actually expanded it to the entire company. And then my team, we got together and we started to plan out initiatives on ways that we can really utilize Slack in the way that employees felt that it was the virtual workplace. We also offered many virtual offerings and activities for the employees, because the state of the world last year, let's be real, it was uncertain. People were nervous. They didn't know what was going on, from politics to the pandemic and things like that. So what we wanted to do is bring everybody to join in on several different activities, break up their day, the monotony of the day, and just so that they felt comfortable, that there was consistency, that the workplace experience team would deliver on programs that touch on productivity, touch on movement, things like that, workspace, for them to be able to feel that they have the full support that they had while working from home.
Okay, great, Jennifer. Thank you for those insights, right? And so Ruby, of course, the survey that China's done is 90% of the people want to collaborate, they want to come back. Now, you had an experience of people coming back. Obviously, being a technology guy, my question will be essentially around technology, because we do believe it's at the heart of what needs to be done as you get back to work. But your experiences on, things that you did to make the workplace safe, things that you are doing from a technology point of view, so that, you can make that whole process very seamless for your teams, right? Especially when they work in a hybrid manner.
Yeah. It's been an interesting time. We've actually been adopting a new lot of technological pieces, apart from getting onto Microsoft Teams, collaborating that way. We've also introduced a desk booking app, and the purpose of that, we've been managing social distancing. So in doing all of this space planning, we weren't able to immediately recognize our full utilization with the changing regulations in different states. what we, who we could bring in and who we couldn't. And then possibly, getting a list really quickly of, if we had to contact trace. So implementing those tools and then looking at the future again, visitor management systems, how are we collecting that data? Is our crisis management process robust such that we can pick up that data, use it, and implement right away? Because this is about supporting the staff and making them feel like we are responding in a way that we've heard them and keeping them safe. So those are some of the things that we've put in place.
And Ruby, just from that perspective, how comfortable have the employees been in sort of using the tech, right? Because I think one of the things that we're finding is a lot of people around the world feel much safer if your workplace is ready. They feel much safer if you have put in the effort to put these things in place. But just any sort of thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think from a safety point of view, they've been really grateful. A lot of our surveys have said that they felt supported, that they were given the tools. We were consistently asking, did they have the resources to be able to do their work at home and in the office? And we had really positive responses with regards to that. I think for me, from a behavioural point of view, just creating the policies to get people to collaborate differently. If we're on a Zoom call like we are now, there'll be some people who've got their video off. And, others may feel like that's not enough connection. And then when you sort of dig deep into why they might not be wanting to show themselves, is that because they're conscious about where they live? Is it the noise? Or another reason, are they actually disengaged with their work? So you really want to get to know the reasons why. And what was also fascinating was from a leadership and management point of view, as I think I've been wearing a hoodie just about every single day. I've, always been quite a corporate person, and it was such a shift. It was an equalizer to see people in their home space, but also there were some managers who were really triggered by that and felt like, people weren't caring enough about their work if they weren't dressed appropriately. And so even having some training materials or documents on processes and procedures and what's the etiquette when we're working from home, and what does that look like when you come into the physical space, when some of us are in the office, some of us are at home, and perhaps the microphone doesn't reach or you can't see people. That's that hybrid bit. How does that work from a process point of view? How does that work from a technology point of view? And we're still learning there. So coming in, it's been a little bit clumsy on days, and now it's starting to smooth out, but generally people are feeling quite supported, and that's always about checking in, how they feel, and listening and implementing.
No, sure, Ruby. I think that's great, right? And Jana, just hearing that through, I think they're ahead of the curve right now. But, you're preparing your offices. Any thoughts around how you're preparing role of technology as you're bringing people back to work?
Yes, I loved hearing Ruby talk about that because we're anticipating all of those things. So everyone, they have responded to the survey saying they have the tools that they need at home, but like I mentioned, they're definitely missing the in-person collaboration. Preparing the office, of course, the safety, the COVID compliance, the PPE. We have sanitation and mask stations all over the office. Technology, absolutely. We have a desk booking app, and we've been able to incorporate language into the desk booking app that will ask people if they have any symptoms that day. We are looking at requiring vaccines for people to come back, and that legal language would be also implemented into the app before they can book a desk. So all of that would happen at home, and the desk booking app automatically books the next person behind them 6 feet away from them. So it provides space planning. And then also, like Ruby mentioned, in case we have to contact trace, that's just going to be so important. It's really so key to the plan and going back for us.
Right, Shannon. And I think, at the end of the day, you've got to look at the whole, you have to track the entire sort of journey of the employee, right from the time they wake up, the declarations they do, are they really prepared to come back, and all the way track it down into what the office kind of looks like, right? And I think more transparency you give is better back to the employee.
Absolutely.
You feel very safer.
Yes.
So Jennifer, I think it's been very interesting when you have so many people working at home. How do you manage engagement and collaboration? It would be great to get your perspective, right? And keep them kind of productive and, so go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, so we actually, again, kind of bringing it back to technology, we have an integration in Slack called Donut that we use, because what we found is if we want people to collaborate, we have to create connectors, right? So connectors meaning, okay, are people internally really checking in with each other, saying hello, you know, making sure, just checking in on one another, and not just through meetings, not just through company meetings, things like that. So to keep those relationships strong. So we've been doing a lot of that as a way to keep everybody motivated and productive. And of course, in addition to our other, you know, offerings and things like that, but our sole focus has been mainly on making sure that the employees feel comfortable with reaching out to folks, other employees, and just keeping the culture strong, keeping, you know, everybody, reminding everybody that even though we are not in the workplace, the physical workplace, our virtual workplace is just as strong. And so the main sole focus has been on those, the actual connectors piece. And what we're finding, actually, we just launched this week our employee feedback sessions. So they're just basically virtual sessions with employees that we chose from at random to get some insights on how they're feeling and are they remaining productive. So again, the connectors, face-to-face, which is a big thing that we're promoting as well, is just making sure that employees are engaging face-to-face and things like that as well.
So Jennifer, basically, in your opinion, has productivity gone up, gone down, or do you think it's the same as it was before you all essentially were at work?
Our productivity, actually, employees' productivity has gone up, and it's been really, really interesting to see it. People are feeling very productive, well supported, and they're feeling genuinely comfortable to reach out to us if they need anything. So we've been offering ergonomic one-on-one sessions, things like that. So everybody knows that we're trying to basically cover all the bases to make sure that they feel well supported. And with that level of comfort that the employee has, it is enhancing their productivity. So there's multiple things going on that employees, not just, you know, at their workspace, not just activities, but people are genuinely feeling comfortable to talk to others and connect. And that's what they're saying to us, that they love that we're putting out those opportunities for everybody so that they feel well connected again.
Great. And so Ruby, you know, just talking about productivity, talking about culture, right? So what was it like before, and how's it been working hybrid? You know, do you think there's a positive or a negative impact on productivity as you all came back to work? And what were some of the implications around the culture of the organization? Any thoughts, insights would be great, Ruby.
Yes, look, similar to Jennifer, we actually found that our productivity increased. And, you know, one of the things in the initial days, as we were still trying to get used to working remotely, you get over this hump of how does this all work? Am I slowing down? You try to compensate by working longer hours. So we were having a lot of that happening. And we had to actually, as we were checking in with people, you know, create support structures for that. You know, people who maybe needed employee assistance because they were working around the clock and were just exhausted, you know, and having kids there and things to look after that they haven't before. And, you know, in terms of connectors, I just love what, you know, Jennifer called it that. I found for us, I felt more connected to my team. We got to see them in a way that we never saw them before. There were events that were created, whether it was, you know, Friday afternoon drinks or a trivia, and you got to laugh and really not just talk about the work. We were actually making a conscious effort to get to know each other. And the other thing that was a massive shift for us in productivity and being able to connect was the availability of some very senior leaders who also jumped in the mix. So you could now, through, you know, a chat box, just say, hey, I need an opinion, whereas you may have not walked up to their office and knocked on the door, whereas now it felt a little bit like an equal playing field, and these leaders were collaborating with you more. So from that perspective, I think we've actually driven to our results much quicker and clearer because of the accessibility that the technologies provided. Weirdly, being in the office with them, there was a barrier. Who knows why? But that's what shifted.
Yeah, I think Ruby, some of the good parts that we picked up when we were all at home, I think we've all got to figure out how we can make that happen when we are back to work, right? I think that's very, very insightful, right? So Jenna, I mean, just hearing Ruby through on some of the examples that she gave, are you, as you come back, you mentioned desk booking and everything else, I'm assuming you're going to be working in a hybrid manner. Your thoughts on, as you prepare to come back, and just some suggestions to the audience, right, in terms of making that transition smoother, still keeping the culture, getting the best out of what Ruby talked about, and making sure that it's not, I mean, you still keep that equal playing field, right?
Yeah, I think that similar to Jennifer and Ruby, our productivity also increased. We suspect the same thing. People were working 24/7. They weren't sure when to log off, or they were putting the kids to bed and logging back on. And I know that that has come up. People are a little worried about how everything will shift once we go back to hybrid. We also were put in a position where everyone saw each other in a different light. We were doing virtual yoga, we still are. And like Jennifer said, all those connectors exist. And it's funny, somebody from our people team kept hashtagging vulnerable. I'm feeling very vulnerable, but it was great because we were all feeling vulnerable. And we instituted a random coffee chat bot on Slack so that random employees could be connected with our CEO or our CPO or our CFO. And it has definitely leveled the playing field a bit. And I think, workplace, obviously, it just isn't in the office. Workplace and culture, it transcends wherever we are. And I think we're hoping to bring all the empathy, all the vulnerability back here with us. I think it's probably going to be rocky in the beginning, like Ruby mentioned, because it's different seeing someone in person than it is on a Zoom. But we're hoping that all of the technology that we used and everything that we've all learned together, we're just all going to try and bring it back here. And hopefully the culture will just continue to get better and better.
Yeah, no, surely. And I think as you have more learnings, as you hear from people that have kind of implemented it, right? So just on that point, Ruby, as you come back and you shift to hybrid and you put in all the tools and things like that, basically over time, do you see you kind of looking at your real estate footprint and thinking, do I really need so much space? Is that thought come to your mind, Ruby?
That's certainly come up in the conversation. Of course, we're a finance company, so that's going to be top of mind, I think, for some people. I think the reality is, first and foremost, we want people to feel safe, and we've still got social distancing in place. So at the moment, with the distancing in place, we still need all of our current footprint. But what will be interesting is you don't have people there at full capacity. So what we've been able to prove to ourselves is we can actually operate with less people there and part of the people at home. So that is your hybrid workplace. Not everybody's in the same place at the same time, but we're all still working. And for the future, if we want to look down that path, we can certainly start, looking at those metrics to potentially align with our space planning. At the moment, with the desk booking app, visitor management, we'll be able to collect, who's coming in, is it certain teams that need to come into the office more, and all of that data that we collect will actually help inform that decision on space. But it is a big thing for us to actually, right now with the distancing, force us into lower utilization, because that's really new for us. And we've been quite successful. So if the productivity hasn't suffered, our engagement scores are up. I guess it will lead to that path, and it's certainly part of the dialogue. No decisions are being made.
Cool. Thanks, Ruby. And so, Jennifer, just kind of hearing that through, right? Now you'll have the experience of what Ruby's had, and then, in a few months, hopefully, Jana's going to get back to work. So your thoughts on, since you're going to go on for a bit, right, in terms of working from home, from a global perspective, right? Just some of these learnings and some things that you have seen. How do you see smoothly coming back essentially later on in the year? And any thoughts around space saving and sort of cultural changes that you're thinking about making?
Regarding cultural changes, I don't anticipate any changes because of the fact that we are working so hard right now on strengthening the culture. I think the work there will have to be is, how does it translate in the physical workspace, right? And so those are that'll be the work for the team to continue on with building those connections in physical and virtual space. We're still planning those, so it's not anything I can technically share. But then in terms of space, when we're back, we want to be able to, create, we will be keeping the space that we have, but we want to try to use it in all sections in ways that is comfortable for the employees, so that they feel that they have, again, that second space to come to, and that they feel comfortable, and it's another home away from home. So sort of domesticating certain sections of the building so that they feel that comfort level, and using as much of the space as we can, because it's a great space and we put so much effort into it, and the employees love it. So we feel like, with that, keeping those ideas in mind, that employees obviously will do it slowly and intentional, that people will slowly start to trickle back in once it's time for us to reopen.
Okay, sounds good, Jennifer. And so I think just to kind of wrap things up a little bit, and I want to leave time for questions, right? Essentially what I'm hearing is productivity actually has gone up, right? Now, of course, a little bit is also because people have been working harder, and hopefully you guys are kind of managing that a little bit, right? Second is technology has a huge role to play. So Jana, you talked about that. Ruby, you talked about that. Jennifer, you talked about remote collaboration and things like that. I kind of really like the fact that everything got equalized. So you can just pick up chat, and I am somebody on the senior leadership team, as opposed to, previously that door was closed. And so you didn't have a way to knock in and kind of go in, right? And that has to sort of continue, right? And also another learning that I picked up from all three of you was keep checking in regularly, because you want to know how your employees are doing. Burnout and a lot of other things have been happening. So you have to keep checking in just to make sure people are sort of doing well. Safety is top of mind, which is huge. That's what's going to get them back to work. And I guess over time, when you do have your sort of data in place, re-looking at what your spaces are going to be like. Now I can see a lot of questions in the chat part. So I'm going to go from the bottom, which says, how do you manage employee experience moving forward? What tools are essential? So Ruby, maybe since you've had your people back, any thoughts around the tools that you have been using, Ruby?
Oh, goodness. I think, at the moment we're using the desk booking app and looking at the visitor management system. It's certainly a learning curve for people. We're sort of rewiring the behaviors. They've never had to book a space. They had a fixed desk before, and now it's agile. So it's just making sure that they understand why, that's part of safety. That's part of, making sure that, we can collaborate. There's a way to find your colleagues, book in on a day to be with friends. And just making sure that we have the right people policies, how to engage with that technology. Something as simple as, put your camera on.
Yep.
As I said before, unmute when you want to speak. That never gets old.
Yeah, no, I think, that has been a little bit of a challenge, right? But there's also that digital equality piece. And I think people that are better at using tools are moving a little bit faster, but hopefully the tools have become easier, right? And look, a lot of it was, at least our experience was, a lot of these tools got built during the pandemic. I know that my team particularly worked really hard. And sometimes, when we roll out systems, people go, oh, but it should be done this way. And I keep thinking about it and saying, yeah, it just got built like, about a year ago. So there's a lot of learnings that have gone into it. And I think over time, what will happen is the tools will keep getting better and better. But clearly, success of hybrid does depend on it, right? I think that's going to be hugely critical. Jana, can you talk about technology needed for a smooth transition to the hybrid workplace?
Yeah, I think that just going off of what Ruby said, I think a lot of the tools, we're a tech company, so most of our staff are pretty tech savvy anyway. But like you said, leveling the playing field and making things more equal, utilizing that Slack and that Slack coffee chat bot. So all of those tools, the desk booking app, Zoom, the We're doing ergonomic webinars. We'll probably keep those virtual, just again to level the playing field, because we're going to have people in office, we'll have people working from home, and trying to equalize the experience for everyone. We're just going to continue using all the tools that we're already using: Zoom, Slack, our desk booking app. I'm drawing a blank now, but we're going to use all of those same tools, just bring them all back in-house and then keep them virtual.
Okay, perfect. My request to the audience, if you guys can put in some more questions, there is a chat box that is out there, but that would be great. I think while we're waiting for other questions to come in, just my thoughts on employee experience. I think one of the things that a lot of companies that we work with, Smarten, that we've done is they kind of look at right from the time, or actually they go back a week and they start thinking, well, let's do the planning, and then how does the employee plan? How do they roster themselves? How do they make decisions on when to go back, et cetera, and they're charting their whole journey, and then putting in the, basically putting in the guidelines and principles, putting in the training around it, and then giving them the tools to be able to manage it. That's what is huge. That's what drives productivity, right? So, question, there's an audience question. Any recommendations for a desk booking app? I did not, Ruby, for a second prompt that, but I'll let you make some recommendations if that's okay. If not, that's fine. But we'll take that as the last question that's coming on the group.
Yeah, look, at the moment we're actually using Smarten as a desk booking app. We actually went through a reasonably thorough RFP and had a look at a lot of products. They all have, great functionalities. And what we loved about Smarten was, there was this visual element. It was easy to use. And the team actually won us over. I mean, we're talking to Dinesh right now. And as you just mentioned a few seconds ago, there's this process of sort of working back a week, and mapping out your day. And we're able to have this discussion about what is your journey when you're coming to work? What's that like? And we're able to speak to the Smarten team and have them implement some of these things. Sometimes we've just spoken and they're like, wow, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And that's felt just such like a great partnership to actually develop something that's tailor-made for us, but also quite robust in terms of, what the app actually does in terms of social distancing, in terms of space planning, having everything on your phone. And that's been, really quite fun. And looking at, the visitor management system, which is also on the same app, and soon the workforce planning tool, which we're more and more leaning towards learning how to use, because people do want to come back to the office and see each other. And how do you do that in a really easy fashion? And that tool's something that we're very excited.
Cool, thanks, Ruby. And I think, you talked about Zoom, I heard Teams, I heard Smarten, I heard Slack, and I heard a whole bunch of things. But I think eventually what's going to happen is these different systems have to talk to each other. And I think, if I look at it from a technology leader perspective, that's what's happening in the industry, because you can't have employees dealing with so many different things, right? Now, the good news is the world is coming together. And I think, Jennifer, you talked about connections. And while there are people connections, in my head, what goes on every day is connections between these different systems, so that experience can be made much more seamless, right? Any last question? I know we have exactly 1 minute to go, but if not, let me wrap it up. Ruby, thank you so much. You have shared some great insights into your journey and experience getting your teams back to work, which has been great. Jana, thank you for sharing some details of the survey. We'd love to get more from you. And then Jennifer, good luck with, keeping that connection going, making sure employees are motivated as you bring them back. That's been huge. I actually did get one question. Let me try if we can fit it in this 1 minute. It said, I'm curious to your recommendation advice to make sure tool is used for intended purpose, i.e. when is Slack appropriate versus email? How do you approach setting up guidelines for tool use to improve successful adoption? Who would like to take that?
I'll take it. So we actually have moved all our communication strategy towards Slack so that everybody has a one-stop place to go. Because we were finding that people were in other chatting apps and things like that. And so in any of our communications, we always bring it back to Slack so that everybody knows that's our virtual workplace. Of course, there's email options, but ideally we always try to bring the conversation back to Slack. Anything that we post, communications, anything like that, we always bring it back to the one place so that everybody gets that constant reminder and consistent reminder.
Yeah, and it's kind of interactive. We talked about no door where you have to knock, you just chat. This is a great example. We're using a chat box right now to keep questions coming in. So look, we're just out of time. I'm getting a reminder, but thank you so much. It's been a great panel. Thank you all very much. And Heather, I shall hand back to you.
Thank you, Dinesh and Ruby and Jana and Jennifer. That was so fantastic. I love panels. I really do. This is such a good conversation. And thanks, Dinesh and Smarten Spaces for hosting this panel. Anyone who missed it, anyone who came in at the very end or in the middle, this session will be available on demand starting tomorrow, along with all of the other sessions that we had today. If you're super interested to hear more, as you heard, Ruby loves her Smarten Spaces software. Head over to their